And today I'm joined by Nahum Vizakis. I got his name right the
Yes,
first
sir.
try. Author of The Indigo Flame. How did you come into this space to begin with? For people that are unaware, your name on Instagram is spiritual_bodybuilder.
Yes,
And
sir.
your page has a lot of nuggets on there that I mean are worth breaking down individually. We'll never get into all of it today. But you came into the wellness space. Specifically, I think you're working with men more than anything else. But really, how did you get here? And I guess my first and foremost question is, who is your main demographic? Who is your targeted coaching service aimed at?
Good questions. And first, thank you very much for having me on, man. It's a really it's a pleasure and honor to be on your show. First, the book. It took me about 10 years to come up with the final piece of work that I created. And really it all came from my life experiences. I did 10 years in the military, and before that, I was I had a really kind of gnarly childhood. And I was a very lost soul for a long, long time. So my life experiences are what really led me into this wellness space. When I was in Iraq in 2009, 2010 as an EOD team leader, had some experiences, got rocked a couple times by some explosions. What I learned later after going through a lot of therapy and a lot of, navigating the processes of the military while also navigating the real unconscious parts of myself is I had some pretty severe PTSD and also a little TBI. So as I got out and the military, the process that they go with is they have a very inefficient system. We'll just say that. But they just loaded me up on drugs and talk therapy. And the talk therapy really highlights identifying problems with who you are, like your identity, right? And when you go through these processes and you're taking all these medications, for me personally, it made me feel like a shell of a man. I kind of lost my identity going through that process while simultaneously believing I was broken. So that whole Western medical system really messed me up. So in a sort of a bout of desperation as I was moving through and getting out of that process, number one, I made a decision to stop everything. Now, of course, I don't recommend anybody else do that, but this was 15, 16 years ago, right? So I just felt that I needed a reset. I needed to stop. So I just continued all my script meds, and I just started lifting, and I jumped on some testosterone, honestly, and I finally started feeling like me again because weight training has always been the one thing that made me feel in control of myself. It didn't matter whether I had control or not in the outside world, right? So it that kind of tethered me to really feeling like I at least had control of me, and I was actually at least good at something because I was feeling like a failure in all these other areas of my life, and I was like, why am I here? Why do I exist? I was going through an existential crisis. So as I proceeded through these experiences, once I got out of the military, I decided that I want to go to college to learn psychology. So I went to ASU and I started studying psychology to understand my mind, like what really was wrong. I had a lot of friends that were getting out of the military that unfortunately didn't make it. A lot of people unalived themselves, and a lot of people became addicted to drugs and alcohol and broken families, all this really bad stuff. And I didn't want to be another statistic. So after I went to college for a couple of years, I learned a little bit about myself, like intellectually speaking, but I felt that there was still something deeper in there that I didn't fully understand. And that's when I ended up shifting directions and I went to massage school. And right around the same time that I went to massage school, I found ayahuasca. And those two experiences together really just blasted me open to understanding a much deeper part of myself. When I did my first ayahuasca ceremony in 2014, that was the first time I ever felt the frequency of love, like true unconditional love. I didn't even realize I had never felt that before because the notion of love that I thought was love was actually attachment. It was based on insecurity, on these fears. So once I felt that feeling, I had the experience of that changed everything for me because then I started to question everything about my life and my relationships and the very core of my identity. And I went through many layers, throughout the last 14, 15 years or so that has really culminated to all the very unique approaches to healing and health that I do now. And really now all this stuff is becoming, I don't want to say mainstream, but it's becoming much more accepted. There's a lot of scientific studying going on behind the scenes. Even there's, I think, 2 or 3 states right now that have actually gotten federal funding for ibogaine treatment. So people are starting to recognize and understand these imbalances finally. And I feel like all that fortunes of real experimentation. Now, it's kind of biohacking before biohacking was a thing. All that experimentation between performance and also consciousness. I kind of married those two together within myself because I feel that there were two sides of the same coin. And what I came to realize over time was that for me personally, I've always been drawn to understanding what I'm afraid of, really mastering my fear. Because when I was growing up, I was a terrified, scared little kid. And of course, as you get older, that scared little kid doesn't go away. It just gets suppressed and repressed from ego and wanting to, prove yourself or whatever behavior patterns have been indoctrinated to you when you were younger. So I really learned some really cool correlations, and now it's my privilege and honor to be able to help other veterans. I work with a lot of people in the special operations community, but really high performers. I work with people that want to be better at being themselves, really. And I come from some very unique, unorthodox areas, bringing it all together and help really. It's decrypting the language of the human body, right? Our our body is a representative of our subconscious mind. So when we learn to understand the language of how our body is trying to speak to us about any imbalances, what's going on, what's good, what's bad, right? And learning the sensations that move through us, we learn how to identify where any kind of residual trauma is operating on the surface. And then once we're able to really become the conscious observer of our life, of what we're doing, then we're able to slow ourselves down, be fully present, and make more mature and self-loving decisions. And when we finally get to that place where we can make those self-loving decisions, that's when life comes into what I like to consider divine alignment. And that's when things go right. And you're seeing a lot of people right now out in the world that are going through massive awakening experiences. So the Indigo Flame is really an autobiography. It's a story of my life. And I break it down like the hero's journey because I feel like my life was akin to the hero's journey. And of course, it never stops as long as we're alive. We're still learning, we're still growing, we're still expanding. Right. So it was a major chapter of my life where I learned a multitude of very, very deep lessons. I went to some very low places and I've also had some really beautiful experiences. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, it gets there. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there just
Yeah.
from the get go. I couldn't I couldn't help but notice. My first thought process was you quit everything. When you were saying you quit everything, you were I think you were referring to pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
maybe what they had,
Pharmaceutical.
what they had prescribed you in therapy and post military experience. So was alcohol involved in this as well? Were there any other things that you were taking personally, or were you just talking about pharma? And do you think it was
Just pharmaceuticals.
diluting? Yeah, it was it diluting your reality to the point where you made that decision for self-preservation reasons? Or I mean, where did the awareness to actually go ahead and kick that to the curb come?
So I got to a point, I kept coming back. This stuff isn't working. I'm still having issues. And I was on antipsychotics, anti-nightmare medication. Can you believe that there's actually an anti-nightmare medication?
Oh yeah.
I was on Ambien painkiller. They did prescribe me some painkillers, and they were going back and forth, mostly like 3 or 4 or 5 different layers of like antidepressants, antipsychotics, anti or mood stabilizers. You know how if
Mhm.
one isn't working, then they just add another, and then you have a side effect, and they add another, and another, and another. Until I got to a point where I would wake up in the morning and I felt I was like disassociated from myself. And it was actually making things worse. I started hallucinating. I remember one time they had put me on somas
Huh?
and
Yep.
I took that at night. And I swear to you, like, I had to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. And I remember the first time I took that, I'll never forget. I tried waking up and I could not lift my head off the ground. It was my equilibrium was so shot that I couldn't stand up. I could pick my body up, but I couldn't pick my head up off the ground. And that's when I super freaked out. And I was like, all right, this is just nuts. This is too much. So I had to call my squad leader. I was like, hey, I can't drive. I was so dizzy, I was like incredibly nauseous And it took me like hours to be able to just stand up and walk around. And it was really that, for whatever reason, that particular medication just threw it over the edge. And I was like, I don't need this stuff. This stuff is making me worse. And right around that same time, I remember driving onto base and I was looking in the rearview mirror like over and over again. I swear I saw a black van. It looked like a shadow that was following me on the base. So I was starting to hallucinate. I was starting to see things, and that's not normal. That's not okay. And I had a lot of difficult things happening at the time, and it actually increased my paranoia. It increased my sort of delusions. And I figured, well, things have been bad, but clearly all this stuff is not helping, and I'm just digging myself deeper and deeper in a hole. And it was really affecting the few relationships that I had, right? Like I was just falling off. I was becoming a shell of myself. It dulled my identity so much that, it started turning into an existential crisis. And of
Did
course,
you
years later, when I had done a lot of research and understanding, and what this stuff does, it plummets your testosterone levels. It makes your estrogen skyrocket. It makes your cortisol skyrocket. It throws all of your systems out of whack, right? So that's yeah,
that's exactly where I was going next, because you mentioned right after that that you started TRT, and that I mean, obviously the way you framed it, you could tell you experienced dramatic results from that shift in itself, which it's a big conversation nowadays. Both my community, the jujitsu community, has a lot of people that are on it for
yeah,
performance reasons, or people that are on it because they've actually had reduced testosterone. I'm 47 years old. I'm natural, but I've also got guys around me who I've heard their stories firsthand, and I put myself in their shoes for a second, and there's absolutely no way I'd have made any other decisions but besides what they made, especially when they're working with facilitators that are as professional as their doctors are and whatnot. So just go back to the SSRIs and the medication that you were on. Did you experience voices or anything like that when your delusions? Were you worried about
I
loss of control?
I didn't necessarily hear voices. It was more like my own voice in my head was just nonstop chatter, and feeling like everybody was out to get me, feeling like it was like I had to play this game and I had to put on this character, right? To survive the process, number one, because the army has very strict, guidelines, rules, and regulations that you have to follow. So I just felt like a complete imposter. And I didn't know what was real, what was good for me, what was not good for me, because I didn't really have many people on my side. It wasn't until I went to the IG and talked to him that it started unfolding. The unit that I was previously with was trying to dishonorably discharge me, and they didn't even tell me. I didn't know what was going on. So I'm super grateful, thank God, that that didn't happen, and that justice prevailed, so to speak. But that experience, that time frame in my life changed me forever. And TRT, we know a lot more about it now. Back then, I was also, I had just started competing in bodybuilding as well. So I just went with what I felt, really. And now we're seeing like the super benefits of that going on. They're also right now, there's an epidemic of low testosterone in men in the Western civilization. I'm sure it's, all the microplastics, all like the toxins, and the food is, void of nutrients pretty much. But on the other side of that, there's also, quite a few biohacks and scientifically proven ways that you can naturally, spark your testosterone levels. And you look at a guy that like you take care of yourself, and you eat, you probably get diagnostics done every now and then to make sure that everything is good to go. And also peptides are huge nowadays, because those are also a whole class of medicines that just help the body align with itself and make it work more optimized. And when I say optimized is just when everything is working in the way that it's meant to. And isn't that interesting that, I would like to think that eventually we'll be living in a time where we don't need to take all these things to get our bodies, in proper alignment. And I feel like that's where we're going, but it may take a little while, until we can get whatever the technology or the access to, cleaner ingredients, cleaner soil, cleaner foods. And but I think RFK is doing a pretty good job in that area.
have you ever pondered the possibility that those that are responsible for those afflictions and those hindrances to men's health specifically were playing the long game, and that
Yeah,
this was yeah. So
that's all
if
by
we
design.
entertain if we entertain that for a second, if we think about it being all by design, and we know what we know about Rockefeller, I can tell you're dialed into what medicine is at this point.
Yes,
If
sir.
we know that they were playing the long game potentially, are we going to rule out the possibility that peptides, or at least some of the peptides on the market, have been put there for a reason as well?
Well, I feel like the old system is crumbling, but at the same time, that the pharmaceutical industry is trying to monopolize the system. So
Hmm.
I like, especially with the whole GLP-1 game, right? So problem, reaction, solution. And I do feel like there's some manipulation going on there. However, there is a grassroots rising up of awareness, of people speaking up. And I think people in power are there are people like that that are getting into roles of power within the government. And it's starting slowly but surely. I do believe that's going to continue to compound on itself because once you have, there's so much proof, there's so much information, you can't hide from it, right?
Right.
And honestly, I actually feel like the biohacking world or, the alternative medicines, what they call it, I believe that is going to be the new pharmaceutical industry, if you will.
So here's my pushback on that. I'm a self-professed biohacker, and I was fortunate enough to a decade ago come into a community in California, in Malibu, California, that was very much ahead of the game in the biohacking world. And there was two sides to that coin. There was the old school, I don't want to say naturalist, but the leaning naturalist, and the new school biohacking that was experimenting with anything and everything that was coming out. And to be quite honest, we do have a lot of information about peptides doing great things, proven studies showing definitive biomarker improvements, and different BP57 is healing, and all of these things that are substantiated by studies. We don't have the long-term studies for anything, which is just natural during evolution, adaptation, whatever you want to call it. But now we do know that is kind of the wild, wild west of peptide manufacturing as well. And we've got people out here that are selling nothing but soybean oil as peptides.
It's
Uh,
sucks, man. It's so sad.
yeah, and it's almost as if some of the biohackers that really had a platform a little bit ahead of their time had endorsed things that have turned out to be fraudulent and have turned out to be nothing more than pharma moving in that direction a little bit ahead of the curve, like they had almost been playing the long game and knew where they could get their next in. So how are we gonna clear the air, so to speak? How are we gonna move into this next chapter a little bit safeguarded against the same sins and the same, like, obvious fraud and corruption of the past?
Yeah, I'm speak about this quite a bit too because it really bothers the hell out of me. When anything grows super fast like this industry has, there's going to be those that are just in it for the money and don't care about health and actually helping people. They just want to capitalize on something where they can make money. They don't care if they hurt any people. And I believe personally that those people are going to have their karma and they're going to come back and fall away. Also, I know that the FDA has actually been cracking down on that. Anything that is a research chemical, right, which is not made in a compounding pharmacy, which does not have the proper testing or the proper equipment to make sure that there's no LPSs and no pathogenic bacteria in there and whatnot. They're calling out those companies in that industry, and there's people that are speaking out now about that. But you're right, there's a few people that pioneered this world and they gave a lot of good information. And then what do? They kind of sell themselves out and go to research chemicals. And to me, that's just evil, man. Like whoever, like being a biohacker, the entire intention and purpose behind this community, behind this like grassroots movement is to heal, is to help people, right? But you always have some of those people that like, if they have the love of money that trumps their love of wanting to help people. So
So
they're gonna get what's coming to them.
yeah, I agree with that as well. The karmatic repercussions are real. I believe that nobody's going to get away with anything forever. But then we go and look back. I'm a product of the '90s. I was born in the '70s, and
Too.
when I was getting out of high school, and I was I guess I wasn't thinking ahead of anything as far as my health. I was just
Right.
young and living. We had something called ephedra. We had hydroxycut. We had the products that
Yeah.
were marketed through GNC, through the vitamin shop, whatever, wherever you got it. And those, we would stack those with all kinds of different workout things. And I would go to work and I would drink coffee and I would have my ephedra products and I'd zip around the restaurant or the bar where I was working and wouldn't think anything of it. The FDA got involved back then. And what happened was the Chinese manufacturers were removing one molecule and changing and shifting their formulas by a single molecule over and over and over again and pumping things back into the marketplace that they could now get away with because the FDA couldn't keep ahead of the racket, so to speak. So,
Yeah.
how long? I mean, that for me, it seems like we're almost up against the similar kind of situation going down with peptides. I hope not. I hope there's some kind of infrastructure built into this that would allow for the people that really benefit from these products to get the good, usable, highly processed or manufactured well product, but it could be very, very challenging.
Yeah, and that's where education comes into play. And for people like you and I to share this information, even share resources where they can get, legitimate products. We also have to understand too, like the research chemicals in particular, they're usually like a half to a third of the cost of legitimate peptides. So you have those people that are in like a lack mentality that just want to, get in for whatever reason. And that comes, so you're a vibrational match to all of these things, right? So if you're really observing your own consciousness, you're really looking at yourself, you really want to get healthy, you're going to find a way to invest in yourself as opposed to finding a way just to try to get an edge where it's actually going to hurt you. And I mean, this is all part of the world that we live in right now. Me personally, I feel like like I work with peptides with my clients, and I make sure I do thorough diagnostics. I represent what I want to see out there, and I think the more people like you, like myself, that are taking action in this place of setting the standard, right? That other people will line up with that intention and that desire. I don't think a lot of people really realize just how dangerous it can be to, especially if you're injecting something in your body. It's going right into all the most vulnerable parts. And it's also it's insidious because it won't cause a direct problem right away. Right. So I actually go into real depth on this entire topic in my other book, The Biohacker's Guide to Spiritual Bodybuilding.
And you cover peptides and TRT and different supplementing.
Not only that, I cover the dangers of, using research chemicals and what to look for, but also I cover the spiritual or emotional correspondence to a desire to get cheap stuff or too much of anything is not going to be good for you. So even there's a way that you can work with these peptides, just like PEDs, that can be self-destructive or like overcompensating for something, or you can do it in a very strategic and systematized way where you know that you're taking what you need, not anything more than that, for a period of time, and then retesting yourself with diagnostics, making sure you're good. With everything that's going on, particularly like if we're dealing with the physical body, there's always a corresponding emotional architecture to that, right? So I think it's very important when we can identify what we're drawn to or our drive to do or take or experience a certain thing. If it's not truly like if you're coming from a traumatized place or if residual trauma is still trapped in your central nervous system, then your intuition or your drive is really stemming from that imbalanced place. And eventually the things are going to add up and build up, until you have to learn the lesson. Now, the more information, the more knowledge you have can alchemize into wisdom, right? And this is just an example. How you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So this is just one example of how we can really take a step back and look at our habits, look at our patterns, look at our intentions, what we're doing, why we're doing it. And then if you're able to really be honest with yourself, course correct along the way.
All right, so there's a lot there as well, and You touched on dissolution of ego via plant medicines, which I completely understand is a facilitator of that point of view. And it's a mature point of view. It's wisdom. It's something you've been through things in life. You're at a point in time where you can look into yourself and you can also look in the past and look at the mistakes of the past. Now, when we're talking peptides and TRT and all of these things and the way they're in the marketplace, they're hitting a completely another demographic as well. And that's the youth. And
Yeah.
this show's not about kids. This show's not about young men, but I couldn't help but think about this even earlier today during a conversation when it's a 20-year-old kid who's looking at me going, "You're not natural." And me defending myself with, "Hey, I'll get blood work tomorrow." Yes, I
Right.
absolutely am. There are 47-year-old guys out here who are natural, who have pushed the needle further back and have not really contemplated those things. But is their perception of reality forever shifted to it's not possible? Like, it's something I'm asking myself.
Social media has kind of
Mm,
highlighted that imbalance. I mean, there's some weird stuff going on out there.
yeah.
And of course, there's a lot of propaganda that's pushing all that kind of stuff. So I think it's really important for maybe parents or even friends or the people around this younger generation. They're incredibly influenceable. And with all the change going on in the world right now, right? Like people are constantly on the lookout. Nobody wants to work a 9 to 5 anymore, right? Everybody wants to be Instagram famous and rich and living on a yacht. And but again, you really have to be careful. I know 20-year-old should be taking, in my opinion, any kind of performance enhancing drugs. And that includes peptides. Get your nutrition down, get your training down, right? Like get the cycles and systems in a consistent alignment and do that until you max out your natural capacity, right? Once you learn how to like I didn't start anything until I was 31. So I personally believe 25 years old is the threshold because up until 25 years old, men's frontal lobes are not fully formed. And when you start taking these, you start messing with your endocrine system, that will stunt the growth of your prefrontal cortex. And then your identity becomes that performance enhancement, right? You can't hold on to that shredded, full, like, vascular body 24/7 for the rest of your life. Even if you have the most amazing genetics out there, there's going to be periods of time where you have to step back, where you're going to be deflated, where you're going to have to, detoxify or just rest yourself. And what happens is, especially when people start really, really young, is for their entire adult life, they prioritize this validation. The validation that the world is saying, I got to look like this, or I got to, like, I want to be, I don't like looks maxing. Have you seen that?
Yeah. When
That
you
is like,
actually
that is like the quintessential identifying factor of narcissism, right? And yet it gets so much attention. It's so weird, man. This weird
so
habit.
when you actually said something about weird stuff going on in the world, that my first initial thought was to the streamers and to this. I don't even want to call it a trend or a fad because it isn't. It's the decline of an empire repeating itself. And I think somebody pointed this out online and it made perfect sense. You've seen this in the past. And to know that this is another thing that's repeated itself in the same fashion that it has, it to me, it screams psyop from the get go.
Oh,
And
100%.
you don't get that platform without necessarily something going extremely too right, too perfect for it to be organic.
Of course.
So,
Hit the nail on the head
and
on
when,
that. And
yeah,
but I will say what I see coming, because now with the addition of AI and the fast communication, all the different shifts and changes of the old systems, people have forgotten how to communicate and connect with each other in person. I believe that people like reintroducing the idea of maybe it'll start as tribalism, but building communities and putting your phone away and actually learning how to be present with each other and hanging out. Like just like I'm 47. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Like we used to go make forts out in the woods, right? And go like ride our bikes and make jumps and shit and doing outdoorsy stuff with each other. You wake up in the morning, and then you don't come back home until the lights turn on, right?
So this lifestyle that you're talking about is my lifestyle, but it doesn't exist for these kids for sure.
Well, you're right.
And
You're right.
and
Unfortunately,
I do believe tribalism is coming back, and I believe that's one of the reasons we've seen the sport I love so much growing at the rate it's growing, and that's jujitsu.
but
You
yeah,
you have a different philosophy when you step into that building and onto the mats. There are phones around recording sessions, but nobody's about their phones. They're about the engaging in the training, just like you're
yeah,
training when you're in the gym. It's just you can do it by yourself far easier than I can on the mats.
yeah.
It's
You
not
can't do
something.
jujitsu by yourself.
Yeah. Have you trained? I'm sure in the military you had training, but have you trained since?
Yeah, when I was in the military, I trained Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I was getting ready for a fight actually when I was in EOD school, and I was doing 5 rounds with fresh guys for every round, and just getting smoked. And at one time I was doing that, I went up against a guy that was about 50 pounds bigger than me, and I was exhausted. And this dude just looked like he smoked meth before he was getting ready to roll with me. I was like, "Yo, be easy," but he didn't go easy, and I tore my left bicep tendon in my shoulder. And after that, especially being in EOD school, I didn't want to roll back and fail out of school. So that was when I kind of shifted over to bodybuilding. I did some of my own physical therapy for about 3-4 months. I got a couple cortisone shots in there, but I started focusing more on form and biomechanics. And for me personally, jujitsu, my frame didn't really work so well with it. I like Muay Thai. I really enjoy training Muay Thai, and I still do it maybe once or twice a week, more for just cardio though, just to keep the lungs flowing. But man, I'll tell you what, you're absolutely right. I know so many people, like even a couple of my buddies that just started in their mid 40s, and and really getting there. There's a certain level of presence, I think, and like healthy competition that kind of keeps you prepared, like for life.
Yeah, I'll even go a step further. It's problem solving under pressure. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things that we just lack it. We don't have it in most area of our lives. And you know what? If you're good at your job, you go do your job, you're good at your job. You're not really facing the same kind of new stimulation, a new challenge under pressure, and something that you're getting a good workout while you're doing.
Oh
So
yeah.
I have seen a lot of guys come in, try it, get on the mats, and then I've seen a lot of guys quit. And unfortunately, that was one of the things that I noticed the most. And I kind of started wondering why long ago. And especially when I knew a lot of these guys enjoyed it so much. And that's why I've aimed the direction I've aimed it so much. So is to keep people on the mats.
Ah.
So you touched on something else there. You tore your bicep tendon, and there's studies about TRT and the prevalence for soft tissue injuries and maybe the increased risk. Do you cycle off personally, or do you stay on completely? And if you are working with other people, have you noticed any higher injury frequency or any risk for patients or people you're coaching?
Well, for me personally, when I was bodybuilding, many years ago, I definitely abused performance enhancing drugs. I use much higher doses than I do now. So I went about 5 years straight with really hitting it hard. And then I took a couple years off. And when I took those couple years off was when I was doing a lot of work with plant medicine. I wanted to see if I could get my natural stuff going again. But
Yeah.
it just didn't happen. My body just does not produce testosterone anymore. I think the highest I got it in that 2 years was 36.
Wow.
So for my total testosterone. So I stay consistent year round, and then I'll do cycles of HCG with like Clomid or Novadex, right? But what I do focus on, and I want to make this very clear, is that I every 3 to 6 months I sit and I do a very immersive, intentional detoxification process, because I believe detox is super super important, especially as you get older. I've seen bodybuilder friends of mine that have not checked themselves, like gotten blood work done and whatnot, and I have 2 guys that have had to get new kidneys, a friend that created fatty liver disease. other friends that their whole spine is tore up. But being on HRT is essentially just bringing your testosterone back to an optimized level. You're not abusing it, right? So if you have low testosterone, you're bringing it up, maybe a couple hundred nanograms per deciliter. So with that, it's actually, from my experience, it actually does the opposite. It actually strengthens the connective tissue because it optimizes absorption of minerals into the bone. And as long as you're moving, right, and it's a good idea to get body work every now and then and doing all the self-love things. It actually helps with the tendon and ligament strength. Now, when you're abusing it, that's when your muscle tissue gets way stronger in an uneven calibration to your connective tissue, and that is where injuries are abound.
So with that said, do you have a regimen for detox throughout the year, a daily regimen? Are you a regular sauna practitioner? Do you have any of the other biohacks that we would say are chemical free, drug free biohacks that you practice and
Yeah,
you believe in as non-negotiables?
yeah. So for me, every single day, no question, I use my sound lounge. It's a vibroacoustic massage table, right? And I throw on some binaural beats, and that's kind of how I meditate. 'Cause I have a difficult, like I'm like a go go go, kind of guy. The vibration gives me something to focus on, so I match my breath with the vibration, stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system, and helps me relax super quick. Also, I have a red light therapy panel that I put over it, so I'm laying on the sound lounge. I do red light. It depends on how much time I have that day, but usually at least 15 minutes of that. Then, typically 3 to 5 days a week, I'll do the infrared sauna, and that just keeps the sweat going. And I feel, especially after a workout, I just feel it helps me keep recovering quickly. I do cryotherapy every now and then. Not a super huge fan of, like, cold plunging, but I do it because I don't like it. And actually, I know it really helps a lot with inflammation. So if I have like a reoccurring spot on my knee or my shoulder or something that's just not going away, then I'll go jump in a cryo chamber. Normally before or after I do the infrared sauna. So that's more intuitive. That I kind of do when I feel it's needed. But the regulars are the sound lounge with the red light and then infrared sauna for sure.
Have you seen any of the studies on pre-cooling your workouts?
I have, yeah. I tried that a few times. I've a couple times I did notice a positive benefit, and actually, a couple times I noticed the opposite. So I don't know. I really have to be in a certain mood
So
because
there
it's supposed to spike your dopamine of between 250 and 600%. So that dopamine spike is supposed to help you in the gym, but also it's a vasoconstrictor. So I really have to warm up, like a little bit more to really get going. But for whatever reasons, like a couple times when I would go start to try to train, that constricted feeling just never fully went away.
warm up before you started lifting?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, so it has that effect when I think people are especially new to the process or not necessarily going through the right warm-ups after. There's definitely definitely co-founding factors to it, but after a regular practice for a while, you do breath work, you do ice baths, and you get into it where nobody's ever going to be comfortable in an ice bath, but you get to the point where you get to the point where you're comfortable with the process. It's part of your process, and then you're doing your workout. It's a completely different universe. And
yeah.
all I can share with people is I go and I'll train in the morning, 2 hours, and I'll get beat up by these kids that are 20 years old and absolute freaks. And I'll work throughout the day. I'll do something like this. I'll get a couple hours in the sun, and then I'll hit a 3 minute ice bath at 40 degrees or a little bit lower than that. And I'm ready to train again an hour later.
No kidding.
So yeah, and I don't know what my testosterone levels are. You said I probably test. I actually don't. I haven't actually gotten blood markers
Really?
done in years, but I have a protocol that has worked for me specifically that I stick to religiously. I Somebody said something about it the other day, and the analogy I gave them was, imagine you had no job at all, and your job was just to perform your best. That's kind of where I'm at, and I'm fortunate to be there. I
Love
know
that.
I'm fortunate. I don't have the stresses of family, bills, kids, and lots of responsibilities above and beyond my training and this show and the things that I do. So I know I am fortunate, very fortunate, and I've built a good foundation and a good process that works for me. But I have noticed that if you do stick with some of these things, they're undeniable, you know? So
Okay.
the cold plunge.
Do you mind if I
Go ahead.
ask what your specific protocol is?
I've got it listed on another video that's specific. You know, you basically, I'll start my day with probably the same thing you do, you know, water and
Uh,
electrolytes. But the first thing I'm doing in the morning is setting my circadian. Instead of a red light, I'm going outside. I'm grounding. I'm
okay.
doing movement, Tai Chi type movements and more rapid movements. I'm rebounding and doing breath work first thing every day. And I'll hit
I
that
also do
regimen.
breath work from time to time
Yeah.
too. Breath work is so powerful.
It's so powerful. It's one of
Yeah.
those things you get high on your own supply. And I know you know this via plant medicines that there are some places you can go
But you can
that.
have just a powerful experience with breath work
Yep,
alone, activating the
yep.
natural secretion of DMT in there.
Yeah, absolutely. The holotropic or even Wim Hof. You get into a
Yeah.
good Wim Hof session and you really experience things that you would never imagine exist unless you've actually been there. Your feeling is
Pretty
understanding, as Wim
wild.
Hof says. But build upon that protocol, the ice baths, the foam rolling, the certain things that I've got and the alignment that I've gotten. I haven't felt the need to actually go and find out if my T levels were something I should be concerned with because I'm hanging with these kids in the gym. If I wasn't, trust me, if my body started to turn the corner where I was dreading going in to roll with them every day and I
Yeah.
still wanted to roll as much as I am, I would be
Of
talking to my doctor. So
course.
I understand completely why the guys my age, around my age, have, you know, trained for a while and then found themselves in that predicament where they're like, yo, it's time. It's time. But that was one of the other big fears that I had personally was if I go ahead and turn this corner or I get numbers back that I'm not happy with or the doctor's not happy with, am I ever going to go back off of T? And
Yeah,
from what,
that's a valid point.
yeah, from what
And
I've heard,
if you're
yeah, from what,
feeling great, I mean, we should be our own doctors, right? Like you trust what your body's telling you. And of course, cryotherapy is also known to help to boost testosterone levels, you know,
yeah,
along with like, if you're squatting heavy, you're doing heavy deadlifts and stuff like that. So, you know, 100%, like if you're feeling good and, listen to your body tells the truth no matter what. Right.
yeah. So holding out till I'm at 50 at least. We'll see.
Okay. Well, hey, 'cause maybe by that time they're going to have other technology that can actually reinvigorate, the natural production or secretion of testosterone. Who knows, man?
You know, I think it's a trivial matter when you're talking to people that don't live the same lifestyle as you and
Yeah.
cannot live the same lifestyle as you. But if we were all able to start our day with our feet in the sand on the beach, observe the sunrise, get some movement in the morning, be leisurely about how we start our day, don't have caffeine in the first 30 minutes, 45 minutes. We just had these certain things that just were easy and effortless for all of us to do. I think we would see different results across the board if we're all eliminating the same things that can be eliminated as well. The problem is so
100%.
many people in the world only have one sliver of an idea of what's really going on that they're putting into their body and the things that they need to cut out and the things that they should pursue.
Yep.
I made a post about it not long ago and I was just completely misleading myself whenever I was 15 years ago, 20 years ago and thinking about things I needed to add in to be healthier because I
Mhm.
knew there was so many things I needed to cut out. And literally until I cut out alcohol and smoking and doing some of these things, the partying, the happy hour, any of these things that I knew were low hanging fruit,
Yeah.
adding things in wasn't gonna do anything. If you're not sleeping, you
Right.
know it.
Yeah.
If you're not sleeping well, you're
Never
not
gonna help that.
recovering. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, dude, 100%, man. You got to eliminate. Like, if anybody out there, if you are in a place where things are going like you're trying, and things just aren't going in the direction you want. It's always someday, maybe tomorrow. Instead of trying to add things into what you're doing, take a step back and stop. Go back to the basics and eliminate all that, like fast for a couple days. Fasting for 2 to 3 days in and of itself, it'll clear you intuition. It'll create autophagy and clean out your gut. Yeah, you might have to go through a couple of hours of some hunger pangs, but outside of that, it is literally the cheap. It doesn't cost you money, right? In fact, it's going to save you money, right? And the clarity that comes with that, that in of itself is priceless, right? So whenever you're starting, whatever you want to shift something in your life, it's, in my opinion, it sounds like you're on the same page. It's always better to eliminate and simplify and then come back to one step, looking at one habit, one belief, one thing at a time, and then building upon that one thing.
And that
Yeah.
fasting, for that matter, builds several things besides autophagy. It builds self-control. It builds
Yeah.
independence. You start overcoming cravings for hunger, then you can overcome any craving, alcohol or any of the other things.
Right. It is
And there's
definitely,
great.
it is definitely looking, looking in the mirror of how much of a slave you are to temptation.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. There's great tools for that too. That breath work works for cravings as well.
It makes sense. But I never really thought of it like that. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah, you get into I think usually the first day is the toughest one with the fast. You get around dinner time where you're used to having your big meal. You start
Yeah.
to feel that one little thing. You sit down for 30-minute breath work and it's a reset.
Huh. All right.
Yeah. The
I
greatest
love it,
GLP-1 ever invented, brother.
man. Yeah. Right. It's the OG GLP.
OG GLP. All right, so you've got the Indigo Flame Out. What was that other book you just mentioned?
Biohacker's Guide to Spiritual Bodybuilding.
The Biohacker's Guide to Spiritual Bodybuilding.
Yes,
Awesome.
sir. And you can find that on Amazon as well.
And where can people find you for your coaching? Spiritual_bodybuilder, of course, but do you have a website as well I didn't get to?
I do, yeah. My website is optimizinghuman.com. You can also go to my Instagram on my link tree in my bio. All the links are right in there too.
All right, so somebody comes to you, they're interested, they're guys that are 40 years old, they're interested in getting better shape, they want some leadership, they want to understand how to overcome some of the same afflictions that you have in this life. They send you a message. What's your response?
Let's set up a consultation.
Yeah. You sit down, you have a nice conversation.
Yeah, a good 30-minute conversation, kind of see where we're at, feel each other's energy. And usually by the end of that 30 minutes, I can break down like next steps of, what we want to do depending on the circumstances. I I like to work with people like in person. However, if that's not an option, we can always do, long distance. And really it comes down to accountability. I kind of just call you out on the things that you're getting in your own way with. And then I give you homework to do certain things. And then we keep checking in and I will hold you accountable.
And you're in Boca?
Yes, sir.
So in Boca Raton, if you're in person or you can get some in-person coaching, that's where it's going to be.
Yeah, let's get it.
Awesome. What's the name of your gym?
Wolf Gym.
Wolf's. Yeah, I cannot believe I forgot Wolf's Gym. Wolf is the animal for my page on Instagram, that Jiu-Jitsu. So I love the
Wow.
wolf.
Man, it's Wolf is an acronym. It means workout, live fierce.
Workout, live fierce.
Yeah.
Rad.
And every Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m., Kai Green brings a whole bunch of us together for what we call Battle Zone. It's kind of like a modern day TikTok version of American Gladiators, if you can picture that.
All right, dig in a little bit deeper. It's go. It's a
So so we
modern day version.
Yeah, so we stream it live on Kai Green's TikTok, and we interact with them, but we create challenges, exercises, right? And then we split up into teams, red team, blue team, and once we pick the teams, I like to pair people up. Like there's usually like last time we had two female IFBB pro figure competitors, and then we had two gym owners, right? And typically people with about the same level of athleticism, pair them up and we go face to face. And usually it's like, how many shoulder presses can you do in 1 minute? Right. Or how, like we, we do some really creative stuff, but usually at the end, it ends in a tug of war. And, we have a lot of fun and we encourage people, come on down. Like, come play in the sandbox with us. It's a good time.
Be having flashbacks to those like big jousting sticks with the big foam ends to them. People standing on platforms and hitting each other with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get some rope swings in there and climbs and stuff. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe at some point we'll be able to get, a set like that. That'd be fantastic. I would love it.
I mean, that's a blast from the past, and I don't know how many people are going to remember American Gladiators at this
Yeah,
point,
right?
unfortunately.
Well,
Well,
go
brother Nate, yeah, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us. Look, the Indigo Flame is I'm sure your most like known for book, right?
Yeah,
And what
that's
people should go.
I just won a International Impact, Author Award for that book.
I saw that. That's awesome.
So, yeah, man, that was, it's very raw, uncut, just, I poured my soul out, into that book. And the intention was to share all the lessons I learned through the experiences of my life, and where I called myself out, where I was being a victim, where I was self-sabotaging, and understanding why. And really, when I finally got that down on paper and I was able to write the whole thing without being triggered or without projecting anything, it was a huge catharsis. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback, like people saying that they really related to a few of the stories I had. And I go really deep into educating about plant medicine, about PEDs, and about what I would call existentialism, right? Like understanding the consciousness components of why one wants to commit suicide, or understanding, people, the level and depth of trauma of people that have multiple personalities or bipolar disorder or even schizophrenia, and understanding it from a different, more of a shamanic angle. And what I mean by that is all these things are meant to teach us something about ourselves. But what the Western world likes to just disguise a symptom, and they don't teach us that these things are actually here for a reason to help us grow. And when you can shift your mindset like that, everything appears different. And that's, for me, that was shifting that mindset and understanding the underlying truth when it came to what my life experiences were trying to teach me. So, I pray and I hope that, if you do decide to get my book, that at least one of my stories will resonate with you, and that you'll be able, from that awareness, that you'll be able to take different actions in your life and make a, change for the positive.
Awesome. Absolutely. Yeah. Some of the greatest things in my life have been birthed from the greatest challenges in my life.
Right? Amen, brother.
One word you'd like to leave the audience with and why.
The word that comes to me is resilience. I feel like humanity is at a sort of tipping point right now, as the collective growth is happening, or the collective evolution or purge. And we all need resilience right now in these deeply changing times, because there is no comfort in growth. However, you can learn to accept it like a teacher. And I think that, just like you just said, whenever some of the most difficult challenges in our lives really create the most powerful and dramatic, beautiful experiences in the long run, right? So move through whatever you're moving through. Don't give up. Don't deny it. Don't, just let it be what it is, and have that resilience to let go and surrender while continue to moving forward on your path, wherever that may lead you.
Yes, sir. This too shall pass.
Absolutely.
Nahum, thank you very much.
Awesome, brother. It's been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you for having me on, man.
Thank you for joining us. You guys have a great day.